It's often said that the best defense is a good offense, and the long guard gets you both. It is a powerful, proactive defensive system that creates tons of opportunities to hit without being hit, and that's what today's video is all about. In part 1, we built 2 basic positions, LG1 and LG2, then looked at the 5 pillars of long guard defense: traffic, traps, parries, controls, and feints. Today's video looks at which punches are available from these basic long guard positions, then runs down 8 ways to use long guard techniques to land punches. These techniques are intuitive, they are easy to train, be it on a partner or pole or heavy bag or tree trunk, and they are available from almost anywhere. Seriously, almost any time you're punching, probing, feinting, moving, wrestling, defending, or even missing with the arm extended, you're in position to work one of these 8 long guard exploits. In other words, you don't need to fight from a strict long guard position to take advantage of the exits, setups, and controls presented here. You can use these techniques from any guard or position where you end up with the arm extended. If you haven't watched part 1, I recommend you do so now, unless you are already aware of the long guard's basic positions, principles, and defensive systems. You can find that here. If you're up to speed, let's dive right in. Part 1. Punching from long guard. Attacks from LG1 and LG2. First off, when you use any long guard position, all of your rear-handed punches are in play. If you're especially side-on, as is often the case in LG1, you'll get more power at the expense of travel time. And because your bladed body and busy lead hand will be shouldering most of the defensive load, your backhand is free to move up or down or loop around to initiate any punch. For this reason, some people feel it's easier to throw backhanded punches from the long guard versus a high and tight close guard. Other than that, it's mostly business as usual with rear hand punches. Punching with the lead hand is a little different. There is more of a trade-off involved. When you hold the lead hand out, you trade weapons for tools, swapping a powerful jab and hook for blinders, rangefinders, controls, and traps. That's not to say you lose all ability to punch with the lead hand, but you do lose power when you start a punch with the hand so far from the body. Still, while you might not knock anyone out, these low commitment, low power punches can score, sting, disrupt attacks, break rhythm, claim space, and set your shoulders for the next punch. And while your hands won't be in position to hit with max power, they do start very close to the target, which gives the opponent less time to react. You might find yourself landing poking jabs and long, slapping hooks that are surprisingly effective because they are surprising the opponent. Now, as we've established, there are 2 basic long guard positions, and both of these positions come with unique punch opportunities and limitations. LG1 is more side-on, with weight on the back hip and the head further back, where it stays partially hidden behind your lead shoulder and long guard traffic, or extended hand. From this position, you're limited to poking jabs, slapping hooks, and when the lead hand floats low enough, sweeping uppercuts, all mostly arm punches, but quick and snappy. Perfect for disrupting attacks and creating openings for the real artillery, that is your backhand. With weight on the back hip, bladed shoulders, and the head to the right of the center line, your backhand is loaded for bear. Your body is set to go all in on a power cross, hook, or uppercut, with a big weight shift and head slot change, and your lead hand is in perfect position to set it up with one of the techniques covered later on. In summary, LG1 is ideal for setting up and sniping with rear hand power shots, and it also works well to transition to more advanced setup techniques discussed later on in this video. Compared to LG1, LG2 is slightly more squared up and forward leaning. This claims more space, keeps the sharp point of the elbow out of play, and leaves room to rock back with pulls and lifts. Depending on how high and how far across the center line the forearm is held, the lead hand will either be primed for pot shotting with up jabs, rising hooks, and uppercuts, in what I like to call low LG2, or it will be almost completely offline as a weapon, instead transforming into a shield that blocks both straight punch lanes at once and walls off any attempts to rush inside. But let's turn back to the low LG2 position, because that's way better for offense. It is way easier to punch from here. The up jab, uppercut, and rising hook are ready, and they come from weird angles that can be tough to read. But that's not all. The low LG2 position also sets up your lift parries, using the business hours theory I covered in an old short boxing video. in terms of your immediate attack options, the high LG2 position is much more limited. If you want to punch from here without any loading movement, you're stuck with a short pawing jab as you whip your arm out of its 90-degree bend into full extension. That said, drop parries are available if the opponent tries to punch under your arm, and the bar gives you a lot of control in close, should the opponent try to collapse the pocket or clinch. But you give up too much, and that's why this position is never maintained for long.
Now, if I want to rest in a round, that's when I go to what we call my prevent.
Use a different guard as your base, or multiple, and float your arm up occasionally, briefly, to block straight punches. Grab a handle, or brace inside against a hard-charging opponent. But remember, high LG2 is a place we visit, not somewhere we settle down. To do so would limit your attack, make you predictable, and burn out your lead shoulder. But that's enough about attacks from these specific long guard positions. From here on out, every technique presented to you will be available from every position where you find yourself with arms extended. Here's 8 ways to use long guard techniques to land more punches. Number 1, make your jab harder to counter and harder to defend. They say the jab is the most important punch in boxing and the key to effective offense. So what if you could improve your jab's built-in defense so you can throw it with confidence, land more jabs, and put more power shots behind them? Well, good news. Every round you invest in drilling long guard techniques will improve your jab's built-in defense. Why? Because every time you extend the jab, whether you're pawing air, missing a slippery opponent, or landing clean, you're effectively in long guard position, or LG1. So the more you train these defensive systems, and the more comfortable you get in these positions, the better you'll be able to turn any jab counters into opportunities for your offense. And that's not all. Using long guard techniques also makes your jab harder to defend. Most of the long guard techniques that we discuss here flow right off the jab, even using the same delivery and arm mechanics to reach the target efficiently. For example, when I'm reaching for control, or reaching for a trap, or extending my arm to blind an opponent, the action and movement of my arm will largely resemble a jab, because why not? That's the most effective way to get there, and the one I've trained a million times. When you mix these techniques into your game, these techniques that basically share the jab startup mechanics, your jab becomes harder to predict and harder to see. It gets harder for your opponent to tell when you're genuinely punching versus when you're just shooting a hand out to trap or disrupt or block a punch lane. So they struggle to pick the right tool for the job, and you land more jabs. Number 2, create openings and pry guards apart. Many of the same long guard techniques we use to stop our opponent from punching can also be used to set up attacks. Let's work through each and review how they can be used to land more punches. First, long guard parries. To state the obvious, lifts, drops, deflections, and parries all naturally set up offense. You can catch and shoot with the same hand, or hold the door open for a counter with the offhand.
Hold up.
The long guard creates more parrying opportunities than most other guard positions because it forces the opponent to try to punch through defensive traffic, which means getting their punch past a wall of gloves held in parrying shapes in order to reach you. Next up is blinding the opponent using defensive traffic. They say it's the punch you don't see coming that knocks you out, and when you're already floating the lead hand out to measure, poke, punch, and crowd the opponent's punch lanes, blinding them is easy. Whenever you want to put your opponent in the dark, or at least get a reaction, just float your hand over their eyes. They'll either move, reach for your hand, or submit to fighting blind, all of which you can use to land punches. You should be mixing in annoying little blinders like this all the time, with traffic and right-off punches. Long guard makes it easy, but blinds aren't long guard dependent. You can blind like this off any punch or situation where you find yourself with arms extended. Next up is blinding and off-balancing the opponent using controls. With your hands so close to the opponent, it's easy to turn long guard traffic traps, feints, or punches into control that you can use to blind, off-balance, and create openings. Again, you can do this whenever you want, from any position, off any punch or point of contact, but the long guard puts these tools at your fingertips at all times. This is blinding with control. We just covered blinding with traffic, but this version is a bit different. More physical, where we break posture, pushing and shoving the head down to force their eyes off target, instead of gently floating our hand out over their eyes. This is a great way to recover if your opponent slips or ducks under your punches, but it's also an easy control to grab anytime you can get your hands onto the head, neck, or guard from your long guard traffic flow. This is off-balancing with control. Turning any contact into a quick little shove like this works wonders. You don't need to send the opponent stumbling across the ring and out of reach of your punches. Just upset their balance a bit, just enough, shifting it back so they can't throw it forward behind a punch, and sneak your shot in while they recover. Pushing hard with the palm, heel, or forearm, step and drive with the legs as you rotate the hips and shoulders. This rotation will add some oomph to the shove and load your body to punch with the free hand. And you don't have to stand still. Feel free to step around the opponent as you shove to get off their center line and follow up with the attack of your choosing. Up next is forcing commitments and disguising attacks using long guard feints. Feinting deserves much more attention than I'm going to give it here, but in short, feints create openings by numbing your opponent to the startup motion required for punching, or by forcing them to commit to big defenses that leave them exposed and open and unable to respond to the real attack that's coming next. Let's call these two basic functions of feinting forcing commitments and disguising attacks. Feints are integral to the long guard, and they work especially well from there because of how the system supports the basic functions of feinting. First, when it comes to making opponents flinch, freeze, and overreact, the long guard makes even small feints look big and threatening, with your lead hand so close and the entire long guard structure moving to sell the fake. Second, in regards to disguising startup punch mechanics, the long guard is constantly doing just that with defensive traffic, which to opponents will look like a steady stream of pawing jabs and the occasional pawing cross. In other words, your defensive traffic does double duty, not only blocking punch lanes, but also serving as a steady stream of low commitment punch feints that numb your opponent to the idea of your hands moving towards them and creeping into their space. As discussed in our first point about punching from long guard, you can turn these traffic feints into real punches at any time. And since your traffic has been numbing your opponent to the startup motion of those punches, you're more likely to catch them by surprise and land. Finally, let's look at turning traps and controls into pries to tear open guards and land big. Prying is currently popularized by Lomachenko. It is the act of grabbing hold of an opponent's glove and pulling or pushing it down to pry the guarding hand away and create an opening to punch. You probably don't need me to tell you how the long guard sets up these prying techniques. With your hand already hovering near the opponent's guard as traffic, or perhaps even in contact with it as a hand trap or control, you can pull on their gloves anytime you choose. Of course, this isn't the only time you can pry. You can do it off of punches, misses, feints, or in the clinch, but the long guard gives you a lot of opportunity. One more thing, prying is also one of the keys to cracking the long guard, but we will leave that topic for the next video. Subscribe now and you won't miss it.
Do it! Just do it!
Bruh. Now back to your regularly scheduled program.
Number 3, cover your exits and entries. All of our standard long guard techniques can be used to buy time and make attacks safer on the way in and out. You can punch from long guard to cover your entry. You can use defensive traffic to blind or obstruct attack lanes on your way in or out. You can use traps to disable punches your attacks might expose you to. You can use controls to blind, off balance, or grab handles to trap and push and pull yourself into movement in different directions. You can use long guard feints to get your opponents to freeze, flinch, and overcommit to one thing while you move or attack someplace else. And you can use long guard parries to exit with one of the opponent's hands under control. Number 4, improve punch accuracy. If you're having trouble finding the opponent with punches, you can use the long guard to do the following. First, you can stabilize the target. Use controls to break posture, stop them charging forward, and otherwise hold them in place, or freeze your opponent for a moment with a hard long guard feint. You can also measure the target. Every time you extend your hands to create defensive traffic, you're also holding a measuring stick out to gauge distance and pinpoint the moment the opponent drifts into range. You should know that your cross can reach a little further than your lead hand can reach at full extension, thanks to the dramatic rotation involved in the punch, so get used to the idea that your opponent is in range when they're a few inches beyond the reach of your extended lead hand. Number 5, extend the exchange, or sustain your assault. Long guard techniques also work wonders mid-combination as a way to recover from your power punches, break rhythm, and keep control of the opponent as you sustain the attack. It's simple, just mix controls, traps, and defensive traffic into your combinations instead of spamming non-stop power punches. Most flow very nicely in combinations since they already use straight punch mechanics to reach the target. You'll keep the opponent scrambling and buy time to recover for another burst, and you might even be able to set up something bigger if you can blind, off balance, or force them to bite on a feint. All of the best fighters do this. Number 6, counter head movement. In this video for short boxing, I described a simple way to counter head movement and recover from misses. In short, to counter an opponent who slips under your punch, drop your palm, heel, wrist, or forearm onto their head, neck, or shoulder the moment you feel yourself miss with that hand. Make firm contact and get heavy. Immediately look to break posture, disrupt your opponent's balance, and control the head. If you act fast and make yourself heavy enough, you can stuff the counter, stop your opponent's forward motion dead, and leave them in a very precarious position. From this position, with control of the opponent's head and their eyes locked off target, you can punch with either hand, take or create space, step off at an angle, handle pivot, tie up, transition, whatever you want. The simple transition works off of any whiffed punch. It's a fast and easy way to regain your balance after a bad miss, and it counters any form of head movement but the pull. Of course, you don't have to wait until you miss to pull this off. In fact, anytime you find yourself feeling frustrated by an opponent's slippery head movement, you can use controls from the long guard to shut it down. Simply extend your defensive traffic into their head movement matrix with your long guard defenses primed and ready. Don't overreach or try to find their head, just stay balanced, stay frosty, and float your hand into their slip zone. They'll either move away, attack, or inadvertently move their head into contact with your extended arm. If they move, reset. If they attack, defend with the appropriate long guard technique. But if they keep slipping, you'll find the head, and the moment you make contact, get heavy, step off the center line, and follow up however you choose.
Jab again. Push down. Once that slip, you just hold it down. I can't get back up. See? Ain't no counting. He does his job. Somebody that. You cannot count him. I don't care what he does. He cannot get back.
Number 7, maintain punching range. If you're an outside fighter, your opponents are often going to crowd you to neutralize your best punches, and this is another area where the long guard shines. First, trying to walk through that wall of hands can be pretty intimidating for the opponent, especially when your defensive traffic is snapping punches and smothering their jab. Second, should they work up the courage to charge in, you've got the perfect counter ready. Control. They're literally delivering their head or gloves right into your hands when stepping forward. Unless they get control of your gloves, you'll have ample opportunity to post with one hand to stop them in their tracks, then send the other spearing in behind it. Number 8, get inside and land punches up close. Think the long guard is only meant to be used by tall fighters at long range? Think again. Even short arms can obstruct punch lanes while you keep all of your defensive systems in place, leaving no clear target or path for straight punches and priming parries as you creep closer, feinting and blinding opportunistically all the while. If your tall opponent tries to keep you at bay with punches, your parries, deflections, and head movements are ready. If they don't, you get to close the gap, either punching from the long guard to keep them occupied, or turning your traffic into traps, blinders, off balances, posture breaks, and pries as you get in reach. You'll still need proper footwork to cut the ring off if they move, which is a topic for another video, but these long guard techniques will help you creep closer, close off outside fighters' favorite straight shots, and transition to L guard techniques to dominate inside. Anyway, that's all for now. As with part 1, this video is intended as an introduction to long guard offense, not a training guide. By discussing what punches are available from LG1 and LG2 and cataloging 8 ways to set up attacks for easy reference, I'm giving you a roadmap, something you can use to organize your film study, assess your current toolbox, and better understand the development drills I'll be sharing later on. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and be on the lookout for some shorter, punchier, and more pragmatic videos in the very near future. Thank you again for watching, and as always, stay safe, study hard, and train smart.